On a white background, the CCD logo appears. Council of Canadians with Disabilities, a voice of our own, presents a series entitled Know Your Rights. The title disappears and the scene shifts to two women seated in a library in front of a rack of books. Join us now for a conversation between Yvonne Peters, a retired human rights lawyer and co-chair of the CCD Disability Justice Litigation Initiative, and Deborah Patterson, theater, arts, and disability justice advocate. New title appears, Different Kinds of Discrimination.
What are some examples of discrimination that you've seen?
Sure. Let me tell you about some of my, couple of my favorite cases involving discrimination. Several years ago, some deaf people in British Columbia were receiving health care, but they were unable to get sign language interpreting to assist them in receiving adequate health care. It included a mother who was giving birth to twins, and she was unable to communicate with the medical staff. They argued that this was discrimination because they were unable to communicate effectively with their health caregiver. BC Health Commission said, no, you have health care, and it's not necessary for us to provide you with sign language interpreting. The matter went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yes, this is indeed discrimination, and the failure to provide effective communication through sign language interpreting means that deaf people are not receiving the same health care as hearing persons. So that was maybe at first it didn't seem like it was discrimination, but when you look more closely at how it impacted, again, we're back to impact, how it impacted deaf patients, it had a very negative impact. Another example is, again, a few years ago, Via Rail decided to purchase some train cars at a good deal. They got a good deal on these train cars from somewhere in Europe. And because they were a low price, they thought this was a good deal. They bought them, but they were inaccessible. They knew that. They were inaccessible. And they said, it's okay. We'll figure out how to accommodate people with disabilities. If you want to go somewhere, maybe we'll get a van to take you, or you can take a different train. Yeah, sorry you don't have the same schedule as everybody else, but you'll still get there. And the court again said, treating people with disabilities differently by saying you have to use different means of transportation or different schedules, different than what other passengers enjoy, that's discrimination. So, there's lots of examples, but those are two that I think are really kind of set a tone in terms of you can't go around creating new barriers by purchasing rail cars that are inaccessible. Not when we have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms and human rights legislation in place. You can't deliberately exclude people.
In determining if something is a human rights violation or not, what are the key things that we consider?
In terms of identifying whether or not you've been
discriminated against?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So if you encounter a situation, you're a person with a disability, and you think this might be discrimination, you have to ask yourself, have I been treated poorly, badly, negatively? Have I been denied an opportunity? And is that related to my disability? And that's the key. It has to be related to your disability. People are denied opportunities for other reasons, but in this case of human rights, it has to be related to your disability. That's the first step. And then if you feel that is the case, you can do a number of things. You can do some education with the entity that's discriminated against you to see if that helps. You can do some advocacy and see if that helps. And in the end, if you do not get results, and sometimes it's challenging because they don't maybe want to engage with you, they don't want to be, nobody wants to be told you're discriminating, then you may need to go to a third party. But I do think if you feel you've been wrongly treated, I encourage people to stand up and do something about it. Because that's the only way we can make change in society.
Right. So the onus is on the individual disabled person to do the education and advocacy piece first before...
Yes, but you might even want to do it in conjunction with other,
With an organization?
Sometimes organizations come together. Sometimes you can find people to support you. And there are different, entities, organizations who might support you. But yes, the onus is on the person who feels they've been discriminated against to take the first step.
In conclusion, discrimination can take different forms. If you feel that you've been treated badly because of your disability, it may be that you have been discriminated against, and you may want to check out what actions you can take to address this situation.
End credits appear over a white background. Know Your Rights. A conversation between Yvonne Peters and Debbie Patterson. Series producers Yvonne Peters, Debbie Patterson, April Dobbin, and Heather Walkus. Videographer Leif Norman. Audio description Corey Stuvey. Closed captioning Nettle Media. ASL Sign Language Interpretation. Editing and post-production Eric Nettle. Funded with support from the Canadian Bar Association. Law for the Future Fund. Their logo appears. The CCD logo appears again. Copyright CCD 2024, all rights reserved, Fade to Black.